in her room, her father's just told her she has to marry Shishupal, so she leaves and runs to her room. Alone in her own room, she went to her small balcony overlooking the gardens. The moon hung like a burnished silver arc, casting a glimmer of pale, cool light across the roses. But Rukmini didn't see the beauty of the gardens before her or noticed the heady fragrance of night-blooming jasmine in the air. "What shall I do? Oh, what shall I do?" she moaned. She covered her face with her silken scarf and sobbed. Perhaps an ordinary girl, even an ordinary princess, would cry in much the same way. Or perhaps after a time she would move to her bed, exhausted and heartbroken, to fall asleep there, her silken pillows damp with her sorrow. But Rukmini was not an ordinary girl, and not even an ordinary princess. Her father, the king of Vidarbha, was a great diplomat and a warrior, and she was her father's daughter. She must prevent this tragedy. After a time, she lowered her hands from her face and gazed unseeingly into the starry sky. The letter. Dare I do this, Rukmini thought in wonder as the perfect plan unfolded within her mind. She thought some more, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then she considered the alternatives. If I don't do this, she thought, then my fate is sealed with that of my brother's scoundrel friend. She hurried into her room and lit the lamp. Her hands shook in her excitement. A soft, warm glow filled the room, touching the golden threads in the tapestries and wall hangings with glints of light like starlight. Frantically, she searched through the drawers until she found the quill and ink bottle. She set them on the low table beside the lamp. Through the balcony doors came the gentle music of water splashing in the fountain, and a nightingale sang sweetly nearby, but the only sound in Princess Rukmini's room was the rapid scratching of a pen across parchment. That nightingale was sleeping when Rukmini finally straightened from her work and blotted the letter to dry any excess ink. She read the words slowly, smiled to herself, and then carefully folded it. The Brahmana. The last stars were fading in the dawn's faint light as the young maidservant slipped from Rukmini's room and entered the silent hallway. And then Rukmini waited. A knock, the faintest sound, at the door roused Rukmini from her reverie. She rushed to the door and silently opened it. She put a finger to her lips and motioned the Brahmin, Sunanda, into the room and away from the door. Sunanda folded his hands and bowed his head in respect. Princess. The young princess directed him to a low table and took the sealed letter. In both hands she held it out to him. "I'm entrusting you with my very life," she whispered. "The contents of this letter are meant for one person only, the prince of the Yadu dynasty, Sri Krishna." Her cheeks blushed like a delicate bloom of rose. "You know my plight." Her eyes glistened with suppressed tears. "You have been my faithful friend since my childhood. I know I can trust you." Sunanda took the letter from Rukmini, carefully placed it into a pouch he carried with him. From the hall, a loud noise startled them, and they heard footsteps outside Rukmini's door. Rukmini's face drained of color, her breath stopped, and her heart pounded in her throat. They each stood in silence. The footsteps receded down the hall. Rukmini clutched Sunanda's hand. "Make haste, my dear friend," she urged. Her hand trembled violently. "My time is running out." The door closed with a soft sound. Rukmini moved to the balcony. She stood in the shadows of the arched doorway until she saw Sunanda, a dark figure silhouetted against the rays of dawn. She held her breath until he disappeared. Then she sank to the floor with a small sigh, her hands over her face.